I'd like to turn to our featured modeler for this evening, Stephen Elliot. Stephen is the owner of a hobby store in California called Fundemonium. He's also a board member of the National Retail Hobby Stores Association, and he is a friend of Mark's, who also has a hobby shop not too far from his in California. So, Stephen, thank you so much for being here this evening. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jim.
Listen, let me start this off by asking you to tell us a little bit about your store, when it started, why it started, so forth.
Well, this will be our 18th year come June or so. We first opened in another town called Petaluma, and about 8 years ago, we moved up to Roanoke Park when our lease expired. So we, down in Petaluma, we were only about a 6,000 square foot store. And the whole concept of our store was always to be something for everybody. So I refer to our store as a joy store. So it's a combination toy store, game store, hobby store, train store, as well as a family entertainment center. We've always hosted birthday parties and all sorts of events and classes in the store. So the concept was, it wasn't a place where you would just shop and go. It was a place where you'd come and stay and play. And we invited people to hang out. So when we got to the end of our lease in Petaluma, we went from being 6,000 square feet to 14,000 square feet. So we have a huge amount of room. As you can see, this is a picture of the store behind me, shows a majority of it. And it's pretty wide open, spaced apart, easy for people to move around. And what's not so visible in the back of the store, though most of your folks would be most interested in this, we have an operating train layout in the store, O gauge and HO. But then in the back of the store, we have game rooms, party rooms, classrooms. We have an indoor radio controlled RC track. We have an old school wooden slot car track. So we have a lot of things going on. It's the name Fundemonium is meant to be pandemonium, but fun. And pandemonium, the word pandemonium refers to a wild and crazy uproar. So we're a wild and crazy uproar, but all fun. So.
Well, you know, what intrigues me about your store is it hits so many buttons that I hear modelers talk about. Number one, they're model railroaders, basically. That's what my show is all about. Mm-hmm. But they're involved with other hobbies, and they're getting more involved because of the animation that they want to do with the RC people and the servos and the linkages and the knowledge that that market has. They're expanding into military modeling because of the painting, primarily the shading of the modeling that they do. The military modelers, all of the different types of hobbies that are out there, model railroaders in some cases seem to me to be discovering for the first time. It used to be not that many years ago when I would talk to model railroaders, we would talk about their scale. And if you didn't talk about their scale, they really didn't know what to talk to you about. Now they're not only interested in talking to people of any scale, but also of almost any hobby. Mm-hmm. And your store seems to cover a wide range of hobbies that I hear people talk about.
Mm-hmm. Even kids' toys, which is kind of odd. We've got teething rings and baby toys for newborns, all the way up to $1,000 RC cars. So we're kind of cradle to grave. But a good point that you make there, Jim. If there are any other hobby stores on your show right now, or folks who might come see it later on, is the concept of diversification across multiple hobbies. If you're a business owner, if you diversify into multiple hobbies, that helps you weather any downturn or loss of interest in one hobby or another. And for the hobbyists, the people that like RC cars or trains or whatever, going to a hobby shop that has a diverse selection will open you up to new ideas and new concepts you may never have come across before. A good example is we have two different modeling groups that meet at my store. One is the International Plastic Modeler Society, and those guys are really into military hardware. And then the other one is called Wine Country Modelers. Those guys are mostly into hot rods and custom cars and things like that. Well, the two of them never really saw eye to eye, but eventually at one time, the car modeler said, how do those guys building the tanks assemble all those tiny little parts and get all those little working arms and things moving? And then the tank modelers and the IPS looked at the car guys and said, how the heck do you get those things so shiny looking? And next thing we knew, they started getting together and sharing ideas. So the diversity is good.
Well, that's exactly what I'm hearing from model railroaders now. I heard it from Mark when he was on the show. Mark, one of the things that Mark said is, you carry things that he doesn't even think about carrying in his store. So he has no problem whatsoever in referring his customers to you. And I understand you don't have any problem referring your customers to him if it's model railroad stuff that you don't carry in your store.
Yeah, and it's all about taking care of the customer. Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, people living in the community that you're in out there, they've got the best of all possible worlds, because between you and Mark, if you're a model railroader, you can cover just about anything that you ever thought about needing to have between the two stores.
Yeah, and one of the other important points, at least in the relationship with me and Mark Pogendorf, is I focus a little bit more at the kids and the beginning modelers, the entry-level people. Mark he will do great things with kids and beginners, but he's focused a little bit more on the serious experienced modeler. So it's a natural transition that I get people started, and I've got no problem after I've gotten them started to say, you know what, you've kind of outgrown me, move over to Mark and he'll take you the rest of the way. And they'll always come back from time to time for things, and that works out.
What do you see in the newer modeler, the younger modeler, the modeler that in effect you're catering to? What kind of an individual is that?
We have a lot of younger, well, I say younger kids, but it goes up into college age and even young adults as well. But they start with scale plastic modeling. Maybe a little bit on games and collectibles as well. So there's certain miniature-based war games that really combine scale modeling, painting, and gameplay. But a lot of them start in scale plastic modeling, and they start with a type of model referred to as a Gundam. And that's a Japanese cartoon show of flying space robot suits. And right now, that's just the hottest thing going for younger people building models. The older modelers, say in the IPMS that are into the military hardware, they're lamenting, oh, nobody's building models anymore, nobody cares. And I tell them, oh, they care. There's a lot of new young people coming up building models. It's just, to them, the Gundam Wing RX-78 is the new Tiger tank. And you just have to realize you have to get them hooked on a fun experience, and then they'll start growing and expanding their repertoire to look at other opportunities. So that kid building the funny little space robot today might be moving on to doing a full train layout in a couple of years.
Well, that's interesting, because I never really heard anybody talk about it from that standpoint. But because, most of the people that I come in contact talk about, well, we need to attract younger people into model railroading. Well, it may be that what we need to do is let the young people find a modeling situation that they prefer, and then once they've gotten hit on modeling, then worry about the model railroad part of it.
Yeah, I would say what you need to do is attract the young people into creative, hands-on modeling of anything, whether that's snapping together Legos or wrenching on an RC car or building a scale plastic model. And from there, once the passion's lit, they're just going to start spreading out.
And from my perspective, that is, I'm concerned about losing the skills that have built the hobby that I love, model railroading, because people aren't necessarily building the models today that they used to do when I started learning.
Mm-hmm.
But what I hear you saying is the skilled model railroaders, the skilled model RC builders, the skilled whatever, they can be mentors to these young kids coming along, even though they're not building a model railroad at that point. The same skills apply. I mean, they're going to have the same modeling capabilities regardless of what they're building.
Yeah, detailing, weathering, painting, assembly, that spans just about every hobby.
And so from my perspective, having people interested in those hobbies on the show, as long as they're willing to be a part of the mentoring elements of it, I'm all for that. Because to me, I see more and more people now expanding out of just pure model railroading into other hobbies because they're finding skills in those other hobbies that they've never thought about before.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I've got a couple of customers. One jumps to mind in particular because I'm just blown away by him. He's an N-scale modeler, and he's building radio-controlled N-scale cars to drive around his layout. He got tired of the idea of cars on his layouts being stuck on a particular road, and he said, I want to make a radio-controlled one. And the itty-bitty little cars, radio-controlled, but they're driving around his train layout.
And see, I would be interested in having the person that can do that on the show, because I know that there are people out there that want to do that. I know that there are farm modelers out there that want to see tractors on their farms move through the fields rather than just be stationary tractors on the layout that they are building. So I know that that interest exists, but finding those people is difficult for me. That's why I'm trying to start this hobby shop segment on my program, because it's the hobby shops who knows these people who can help share that knowledge, if you will, about what these people are doing in the other various hobbies around the country. So from that standpoint, for me, your association is important for my show, because your association has the hobby shop owners. And the hobby shop owners, or the hobby store owners, are people. That's where I learned an awful lot about modeling. I used to go in the store and either talk to the owner, talk to one of their employees, or talk to the other customers and get my questions answered.
Yeah, that's one of the key values that a hobby store is going to provide versus online. So like what you're doing here with this show is great. You're recording it, you're putting it up on YouTube so people can learn a lot by seeing that, but it's not quite the same as getting face-to-face with somebody and having that discussion, maybe handing pieces back and forth to take a look at them. And that is a real service and a value that the hobby store provides.
I agree. That's exactly why I'm interested in the segment on that Mark is going to be doing for me about hobby shops and the modelers. Because what I hear, both from hobby shop owners that I've talked to, I've had 5 different ones now, you'll be the 6th on my show. A lot of the things that they're saying, hobbyists are saying. I mean, it seems to me that we have an awful lot of interest together in success. You know, if we support the local hobby shop, you benefit, but we also benefit because you have the knowledge, you have capabilities that we need, we have capabilities that you need.
Yep. And especially for a hobby store owner, the most satisfying thing for me, or maybe not the most satisfying, but one of the most valuable things is when I encounter that customer that says, I really like this, I want to do more. Can I start a club at your place? Can we do something, an event at your place? Can we run a seminar or a class at your place? And when that happens, I'm all for it. And I'm like, yeah, let's figure it out. Let's make this happen. In fact, it's not train related, but we just this month had a customer come in. He likes a style of radio control car driving called drifting. And it's driving an RC car where it's sliding around corners. It's spends more time sliding sideways than going forward. But it's almost like figure skating with an RC car.
Yeah.
And he just said, I'd really like to do this. And I got a couple of friends. Can we set up a night to do it? And, what would be involved? And we got it going on Monday nights. And we went from just 2 or 3 people showing up and talking about it to about a dozen people last Monday, all sliding cars back and forth across my store floor.
Well, see, that's the kind of thing that I hear that modelers are interested in. They want to they want to have a place that they can go and get information, that they can meet other modelers that have the same interests that they have, that they can share information, that they can learn from each other. I hear from modelers that they like the hobby shop owners to provide them a space for clinics, for meetings, for get-togethers, if you will. And if you're doing that, you're doing exactly the kind of thing that I hear the modelers say they want from a hobby shop owner.
Yeah, and we love doing that. The one thing I would ask modelers or hobbyists to keep in mind is the store owners love to do that, and we often will try and do it as much low cost as possible. But you realize if a store owner is holding aside 1,000 square feet of classroom to do these kinds of things, there has to be a way to back them up on the expenses and costs and or actually even make it profitable. So
absolutely.
A lot of times folks will just say, well, I want that space. You don't appear to be using it right now. I want to use that space. And it's like, well, I'm paying a lot for it right now and it's not being used. So let's work something out.
As far as I know, free space is a thing of the past. So
yeah.
So I think everybody understands that. It's just a question of, does the hobby shop owner, understand the needs of the hobbyist? That's where I'm trying to get to here. And what I hear from you and from the other hobby shop owners, you understand us. I'm not sure we understand you totally. I'm not sure that there's a place, and I'm hoping at some point your association can be that place where the modeler and the hobby shop owner are together, where they can talk like we're talking now, where they can exchange what their needs are, what their wants are, desires, and try to figure out a way to get together. Because right now, that forum doesn't exist anywhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I'm glad you brought that up. I know that was part of your proposal a month or more. I guess it was before the holidays, about having me come on as a representative of NERSA to talk with you. Right. And we are taking a look at that at the NERSA board of directors. And it's a matter of working out the logistics or the mechanics of doing something like that, because NERSA was formed as sort of a business to business organization, a place for store owners to talk with each other about the challenges of running a store and solving those store related problems. So it's not necessarily that we want to see our customers seeing that part of it, watching us make the sausage of a hobby store. Nobody would want the sausage then. But I think you've got a really good point that there should be some sort of forum where we can get the input from customers, and customers can understand what store owners are trying to provide, so that we can find a way to serve the customers and keep the store owners alive. So,
and I think it's a two-way street too. I think that the hobby shop owners have to understand what the modeler, what the hobbyist is looking for in that hobby shop, and why more hobbyists are going on the internet rather than going to their local hobby store. Because you make a valid point about the value of being in the local hobby shop, and that you don't have on my show, because it's not touchable. You can't touch and feel the merchandise or anything. But at least it's a step to try to get to that point. So the hobbyist isn't interested in trying to learn how to be a hobby shop owner. The hobbyist that I know is interested in trying to have point of view where the hobby shop owner understands what their needs are, where they're coming from, how their hobby may be changing from the way it was in the past, and where they're going in the hobby, as well as the hobby shop owner wants to hear from the hobbyist to how they can make more money.
Yeah. Yeah, it's any any really good hobby store owner is going to be constantly soliciting input from their customers, asking opinions, things like that. But there are hobby store owners out there that are just a vending machine. They stock their shelves, they have their counter, they sit in there and they just wait for people to come and hand them stuff. And if that works for them, it's America, you can do whatever you want. But that's where we've got the broad range of hobby stores, and we've got a broad range of hobby customers. And some of them just kind of want the give me the goods and I'm gone approach, and as cheap as possible. And there's going to be a segment for that. But then it's a matter of connecting at the other end, the hobby store that wants to provide a really personal premium experience to people, and finding out how you can hook up with the kind of people that understand and value that kind of experience.
And the modeler really, that I'm talking about, he's a 12-month modeler. He's interested in coming in June and July and August, and not just at Christmas time or a holiday kind of situation. And his needs are possibly different than the person that just wants to come in, grab, and leave.
Yeah.
He enjoys he needs the help. He needs experienced sales force, frankly, in the hobby shop that can talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in hobby shops where you walk in and ask a question, and they say, "I'm sorry, we don't carry that." And you can see it sitting on a counter, 4 feet away. So it's just, that's the situation out there. But I do think that modelers have a role in your association. I'm not sure how to do it. I've thrown it out. I've talked to Rod about it several times. There's just no place right now where the modelers and the hobby shop owners are together talking. And to me, when I hear the problems that hobby shops are having about not getting product, of manufacturers in effect cutting the price on them, where they can't compete on a price, where the manufacturers are encouraging modelers to sign up for their email list, and by the time a new product is sold out, the hobby shop owner may not have even been notified the new product's ready to be shipped.
Yeah.
So their customers, unless they're on this mailing list from the manufacturer, being a hobby shop customer gets them nothing in that case. Well, hobbyists don't necessarily know that, or know all of the mailing lists they need to possibly get on. Well, the hobby shop has that problem, so do modelers. And those are the kind of issues that, to me, are just natural for hobby shop owners and modelers to be able to talk about and try to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah. And NERSA started in that, doing almost exactly the same thing between the hobby manufacturers and the store owners. That whole idea of let's talk and figure out how we can work together. But then I like your idea of saying, all right, let's take the next step down the road and now get the hobby store owners and the customers talking the same way. So
exactly, because the manufacturers have their viewpoint. See, from my standpoint, when I started trying to figure out how I could try to, from a mentoring standpoint, try to help modelers today have the same kind of experience or close to the same kind that I had when I learned how to model. And going to local hobby shops was part of that experience. Knowing the manufacturers in a lot of cases was part of that experience. That's why Nutrax is a member of the Hobby Shop Association, because they have a place for modelers to join their association. And when I found that out, I thought, well, why doesn't the Hobby Shop Association have that same capability? And I understand about the business aspects of it and so forth, but I'll give you an example. You heard me start the show tonight talking about Walters and their program for scholarship for high school kids. I think that's a wonderful idea. As far as I know, Walters is the only hobby manufacturer that does that. There may be others. I've never heard of them before. So I asked the hobby manufacturers to consider that kind of a program for the association, because I think it's a wonderful program. you know, between offering kids a scholarship, an education, if they're in the hobby, if they're hobbyists, and then combine that with the Professional Model Makers Association, which could provide them a career in life as a hobbyist if they want to stay in that field. To me, that's a wonderful reason. That's two great reasons why people should become hobbyists.
Mhm. I really liked when you sent me that link to the Professional Model Makers Association. I hadn't seen that group before, but I really liked it. And I think they might have a good template for what we could do to achieve what you're looking for, where they've got that public membership level. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's only a few things that are on the public side of the wall, but it's enough for them to at least kind of see what's out there. And then the professionals have the other side of the wall where they can deal with their sensitive stuff. So
Exactly. And you know, from my perspective, it's not the sensitive stuff that I'm interested in, but the knowledge base that they have. If a model railroader, for example, is having a problem with 3D printing, there are people in that association that can solve that problem in a heartbeat.
Mhm.
And from my standpoint, they provide such a great tool for modelers, and modelers provide a future workforce for them. I mean, where else can they find the skills and so forth that people have developed over 10 years or 15 years of modeling, other than model railroaders, model aircraft builders, model car builders? I mean, they've got the skills that these professional companies want.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got where I'm located in Northern California, just a little north of San Francisco. Your members may or may not know that that's where Lucasfilms started. And of course, the primary corporate offices are right up there, 10 miles away from me. So I know a lot of modelers that worked on the original Star Wars or Disney cars and things like that. And those guys aren't being allowed to retire because there's not enough modelers coming up the ranks. It's like, you can't retire. You're the only one who knows how to build this. And the guy's saying, I'm done. I'm tired. I want to go lay on the beach. And it's like, nope, can't do it. So.
Well, it surprised me when I found out originally about the organization. They had a national contest last 2 years ago, and they had 167 entries, not one single entry from the United States. And the reason for it is that they're convinced is there's no university in the United States that has a modeling program. They have them in England, they have them in different other countries, but not in the United States. Mm-hmm. So in the United States, if you want an entree into professional model making, it's basically through a hobby.
Partly that, but I would throw out there, and this is my personal experience, because I started my career, I started my higher education as an architect. And if you're talking with kids and you want to get them interested in building models, designing things, learning the artistic, creative side of things, suggest they study architecture. That is a much better liberal arts education than liberal arts. Studying architecture, I learned things such as contract law, project management, electrical engineering, plumbing, mechanical engineering, as well as every single semester, we had to build 2 or 3 models of our designs. Every couple of weeks, we had to come up with a design. We'd have to build a model to take to a jury and explain what we were designing and why it was a good design. And so I was a modeler before I went into architecture, but I think the reason I chose architecture as a profession is because I like to build the models. So if your kids are saying, gee, I'm not sure what to get into, or you're thinking, how can I grow the interests of people who like to build models, maybe suggest they study architecture.
That's great. I've never heard anybody talk about that before, and I'd never thought about it. That's a wonderful point. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
What do you see as your main business problems going forward?
I've been very fortunate lately. I can't hardly say there's big problems. But if I back up and maybe partly put on the hat of the National Retail Hobby Stores Association member, I think the biggest challenge right now, industry-wide, manufacturers, store owners, customers, is working on these relationships to keep the environment for hobbies and modeling healthy. Right now, we're in a very kind of fractured time when we've got manufacturers and distributors trying to figure out how to cut out the stores quite often, just go direct to the customer. We've got customers that are also maybe saying, well, I can go to direct and I can get it for a much, much cheaper price. Why do I need the hobby store? But then they realize there's some value there to the hobby store. But by then the hobby store is on its last legs, or it's going out of business.
Okay.
So we got to work on that relationship. That's why I like what you were proposing is, okay, you have the Hobby Manufacturers Association working on the relationship of the manufacturers. NERSA working on the relationship of all the store owners, and a little bit NERSA and HMA are working together. We got to pull the customers in there and build up this mutually beneficial, respectful kind of relationship that'll work for everybody. And partly on that is when I take a look at the spectrum, I had mentioned before this sort of spectrum from you just get it and you get it cheap versus a really great premium kind of experience. When I'm trying to explain this to people, the way I often refer to it is I'm a fan of craft beer. I'm out here in California, and a nice IPA craft beer I really like. And for a while there, one of my favorite beers was available in multiple places. I could go get it at the local discount warehouse store. I could get it at my favorite neighborhood market, or I could go and get it at a brew pub. And it was interesting because at the warehouse store, it was like $3.50 a pint for this beer. But the warehouse store was big, cold, dirty. There was always long lines. They had 12 checkout registers, but only 2 checkers to run the lines. And so it was a hassle to go in there if you wanted to pick up a beer. The only reason I ever stopped in there was it was convenient on my way to work. I wasn't really that concerned that it was a low price, but it was like, or I was on my way home. I didn't drink on my way to work, but on my way home, it was okay, long day, I want to have a beer and I know I'm out, so I'll stop into this place and get a beer. My local craft market is a really nicely laid out market, nice store. A lot of the employees in there I know by name, very friendly place, nicely designed. But that same beer there is now about $5 a pint. And but that's where I shop most of the time because I so enjoy that experience of shopping in that particular store. And of course, the brew pub, when I want to treat myself, now you're looking at $8 to $9 for a pint, but you're going into a nice place, you're sitting down, someone's coming over and waiting on you. They're bringing you your pint in a chilled glass. They're making sure you're happy and asking if there's anything else that you need to do. It's the same beer. And I'm paying anywhere from 2 to 3 times the price for the exact same amount of the exact same beer. And the only difference are the people in the local store or the people in the brew pub that are servicing me. And I think once you start to understand that approach, you have a better understanding of the spectrum of hobby stores, that they all need to exist. You need to have the low price warehouse store, but there also needs to be the higher end premium service where you're really pampered and treated well when you go in there and shop for your hobby supplies. And then one other cautionary thing that I'll throw out, the hobby store owners have their own private Facebook group where they discuss issues. And of course, unfortunately, every once in a while, the issue comes up of, oh, have you heard this store's closing? Here's another store closing, and laments and things like that. But that store owner who was closing his store, I think said something about his closing that was probably the most crystal clear, succinct explanation that I've ever heard. He was a successful store owner. It just got time for him to retire. And someone said, "Oh, it's such a shame that you're closing." Well, nobody wanted to take over the store from you. And he said, "Well, we tried. We had a couple people who looked seriously, but they just couldn't pull it off." And then he said, "In order to do it, you really have to find somebody who has a passion for the hobby, who wants to work hard for very little gain." And then at the end, he said, "It's been a 15-year job and it's time for me to do something else." So that crystallized for me the dilemma of a hobby store owner is nobody wants to buy the business because it's not really that great a business. Because if you're going to be a hobby store owner, the mindset, which is the problem, is the mindset. It doesn't have to be this way. But the mindset is you got to really love what you do because you're going to work super hard and you're not going to make much. And at the end, too many hobby store owners, instead of being a business owner, just own their job. And when they get to the end of their job, the hobby shop goes away. And that's something I'm really passionate about trying to find a way to fix.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I hear the same thing about people who have spent a large part of their life trying to build a small business called model manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a nice product line that they've worked their hearts out for a lot of years, probably in their basement or in their garage with their wife doing the books and the kids helping and everything. It's a family deal. But trying to pass that business along, trying to find people that'll come on and take that effort and everything that and all the goodwill that's been built on the years and pass that on to somebody else. They can't find somebody that'll do it.
Yeah.
And partly it's because the small hobby manufacturer that I consider to be the real soul of our hobby, at least model railroading, and I'm sure it's the same thing in other hobbies. You got to love it. I mean, it's not something that you're going to become a billionaire overnight with doing. You've really got to love it and fight for it to be successful. And there seems to be less and less of those people coming along.
Yeah. And NRSA, the National Retail Hobby Stores Association, is trying to help with that we just launched, and I'm on this committee as well, an education committee. So the idea behind the education committee is running monthly training seminars for hobby store owners so they can learn how to be better business people, to build a better business that's going to serve them well and allow them to survive. And I think that kind of education, if there was a public facing customer one, might be worthwhile as well. But right now we're starting with, let's train as many hobby store owners as we can on how you can do your business better so you have a better chance of surviving.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100% because it's obvious that there are there are model railroad manufacturers that are not what I would call business people.
Mm-hmm.
They love the hobby. They love what they're doing, but they don't look at it as a business. It's a hobby still. They make some beautiful products, some fantastic things that a lot of people love to have in the hobby, but they're not creating a business. So yeah, that kind of an education for them, I think would be worth its weight in gold. Is it available right now? Not that I know of from anywhere.
Yeah, we're just getting it started. We had our first seminar last month. We have another one coming up. And again, this is just for members of the National Retail Hobby Stores Association. But once those store owners start learning how to make their businesses more successful, then you're going to start seeing healthier hobby stores and more, hopefully, hobby stores. People saying, hey, this is a viable business. I don't have to be a martyr to produce, to have a hobby store, or HMA is watching what we're doing, and they're interested as well, doing it for the manufacturers.
You know, I hate to say this, but until I started talking about the association, the National Retail Hobby Store Association on the show, I never heard of it before.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that the hobby shops had an association. Most of the train stores, hobby shops that I've had on this show are not members of the association. Why they're not members, I don't know. I haven't really gone up and tried to find out, why they're not members. I told Mark when he was here last week, I said, you're the first one. The other hobby shops are not members of the association.
And I browbeat him until he finally gave up and said, all right, Steve, leave me alone, I'll join. So
that's what he told me. But the point I'm making is I'm not sure how well known your association is. I'm not sure the publicity that your association is getting, because I'm not sure that the hobbyists know the concerns that the hobby shop owner has, that if he doesn't work with him, if he doesn't help him, then if he wants to see him go, that's the best way to see him go. Just ignore him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. And historically, I started going to the National Retail Hobby Stores Association annual show probably 15 years ago. And back then, there were a pretty solid group of model railroading manufacturers that displayed at the show, and hobby stores that carried significant portions of model railroading supplies as well. In fact, the president of our association right now is primarily a model railroader himself, and that's his core business. But radio control kind of came along and took over and swamped almost everything else, even models, scale plastic models and all the other things were getting kind of pushed back for the radio control. And this year, NRSA is making a concerted effort to start trying to bring back model railroading as part of NRSA membership for model railroading stores, and get the model railroading manufacturers back on board as well. It became kind of one of these self-defeating cycles where the model railroad stores said, yeah, it seems like it's all RC companies there. Not much is being paid attention to the model railroad manufacturers, even though some of them were there. But then the manufacturer said, we're not seeing very many model railroad stores. And so both sides just started dwindling. This year at our annual show, we're making a big push for model railroading manufacturers to be part of the show. I don't know the details on it, but they're looking at discounts or incentives to get the model railroad manufacturers to display at the show. There's going to be a huge garden railroad tour as part of the show. It's in Las Vegas, so it's a nice outdoor tour. And I went on it many years ago, and it was a great experience because we visited maybe at least half a dozen exquisite outdoor garden railways. So NRSA knows that something's gone wrong in the model railroading side of the industry, and we're trying to bring those stores and those manufacturers back into the fold. And the next logical step is also go after bringing the customers in.
Well, I'll mention this to you. What I hear is there is a disconnect between the small manufacturer, small in any hobby, I would say, but I'm talking specifically model railroad. There's a disconnect between the model manufacturer and the hobby shop about who gets paid what.
Mm-hmm.
And how does the hobby shop manufacturer help the hobby shop by having a pricing situation where both of them can make money, and that doesn't seem to be there right now in either the hobby shop owner's mind or the small manufacturer's mind, at least the people that I have talked to about it. I keep hearing things about one internet company that for $29 a month, they'll advertise my product. They'll sell my product. They'll collect the money for the product. They'll send me my share of the whatever the deal is. And that's all I got to do is just sign up for $29 a month. So I said, okay, how about if you pay a hobby shop $29 a month? Would you do that? And what would the hobby shop have to do if the small manufacturer paid the hobby shop $29 a month? What would the manufacturer get for that? And what would the hobby shop do for that?
Mhm.
Well, I don't know whether there's a business plan there or not. I have no idea because this is not something that I'm familiar with. But that struck me that if that's the deal of how the manufacturers in the hobby are selling their product, then if the hobby shop owner wants to be able to deal with the manufacturer and sell their product, there's got to be some kind of a program where both of them make some money and both of them see the value in it.
Yeah. I think
I may not be presenting this properly. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the issue of education for both the hobby store owner and for the small manufacturer. The big manufacturers understand this better. But a lot of the people, like you said, they start the manufacturing side, small garage hobby manufacturing, making parts and things. And what they miss, and this is part of the experience and the business education side of things, what they miss is the built-in margins that need to exist to scale up that product. And if they're really new at it and they're like, this is so super cool, I want to make these and I want to sell them, they're thinking about, well, if I make them and I sell them to the end user, how much money do I want to make? Boom. And they're not thinking about, well, what should the price of this item be where I can make enough money to justify making it. A distributor can make enough money to justify stocking a huge warehouse full of it. And then the hobby store can justify making enough money buying it from the distributor to put them on their shelves. And there was this whole idea that started long, long ago of cutting out the middleman. Well, what happened is we just got a new middleman. It's just the internet website is the middleman, and a lot of people are missing how much money is being wasted, sucked out by that middleman, and not keeping the hobby industry healthy.
I agree. I totally agree. It just, to me, the conversation that I'm trying to have with your association, and the conversation is the same conversation I'm trying to have with the Manufacturers Association, because where does a small manufacturer go? You know, he can talk to me. That's not going to get him very far, but at least I think I understand some of what's involved here. And I don't sense that the Manufacturers Association has a place, and I don't sense your association has a place. And so the reason I'm having this conversation is I'm trying to find that place where the hobbyist has a voice, where the small manufacturer has a voice, where there's some place where we are communicating with each other for the benefit of our hobby.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I would posit the small manufacturer, the natural fit would be the Hobby Manufacturers Association, but they've got to kind of broaden their vision away from the huge manufacturing companies that are going out and having dies produced in China and producing thousands and thousands of things, to figure out a way to help the small manufacturer step up their game, maybe not to the point of doing container loads worth of stuff, but how do they scale up to where they become economically viable for a distributor or a hobby store to carry their products.
And it'd be their choice. If they don't want to scale up to that size, then they can stay whatever size they want to, and just understand that that's going to be their market.
Yeah. I mean, it's perfectly legitimate for someone to say, I love making 100 of these widgets a month, and if I sell 80 of them and 20 of them I'm using for myself and my friends, I'm super happy. That's okay. Yep. But then everyone has to realize they're probably not going to be available to, well, more than 80 people a month. So
That's right. And so maybe those other people that want it, they just can't get it.
yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to belittle this, but I do hope your association will consider working with us to sponsor our segment that we're doing on the hobby shop and the modeler. Mark is doing for us. And I really hope that your association's board gives careful consideration to it, because we're not asking for money from you. We're just asking for recognition, so that we can promote our show more. And again, trying to find a source for the kind of communication that you and I are having right now.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you I'm on the membership committee, which is meeting tomorrow. And then we have a communications committee and an education committee. And I'm also on those. They suckered me into a lot of roles. But we're going to be talking about that at all of those meetings and trying to figure out which is the best committee to take the lead on that. I would probably think the communications committee, but it has primarily been focused on communications dealer to dealer. But I think there could be a spot where we also do communications of store owner to customer.
Well, I look forward to hearing from you about it, and I can't thank you enough. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything for Stephen?
Yeah, Jim, this is Phil at home. So Stephen, I have just a real interesting question, because it strikes me the conversation you guys had misses the kind of fundamental, which is volume is what drives your business, right? So if you've got a product that basically one person buys it a year and you've got two on the rack, your carrying cost for that inventory becomes very high very quickly.
Yes.
And so that applies in a couple of dimensions. I mean, one is there's this long tail of products of low volume. If we come back to the discussion you just had, the problem is if you have n number of model railroaders and 1% wants to buy that kit by that small manufacturer, if you divide those model railroaders by hobby shops, you end up with the probability of selling that kit in a hobby shop maybe as 50-50, right? Because you have to have a modeler in your footprint of your hobby shop that wants to buy that kit. And it strikes me that the bigger problem that the hobby shops have with that set of products is kind of this whole long tail is, how do you sell those products and manage the inventory issues? Because it's not just the pricing, it's the inventory issues just as bad. And I've had some conversation with hobby shops about, can you do some shared inventory? Can you combine that to some centralized buying to get the volume discounts that, that sometimes the larger distributors get? Because it strikes me that the challenge that have is as technology allows people to build smaller and smaller volumes, and therefore more and more focused on specific characteristics, it becomes harder and harder for hobby shops to work with that. I mean, one of the other things we talked about, one of the other hobby shops about, was the challenge of buying expensive items like locomotives. A DCC locomotive that's $300. When you buy it, you're buying a specific road name and a specific model, and you have to have a specific modeler who wants to buy that. And so I'm just curious, have you at all thought about how do you manage those issues for the smaller hobby shops? Are there ways to integrate these smaller manufacturers that maybe that you can't really have inventory, but you become a place to buy those things and then pick them up when they come in, or a place where you go see you can go see products, but you just have samples there, and because I know what it looks like now, I can buy it and it shows up in 2 weeks, and it's part. It strikes me that I think the dynamics, the pure numbers of the market make it very hard for hobby shops to carry this volume of products we're seeing. I don't know, does that make sense at all as a thought process?
I think there's two issues there. One, I mean, partly the future for the highly customized boutique specialized kind of item might just have to be direct to customer via the internet. The manufacturer says, I'm making this, I'm going to have 5 forever in the world. Get in now and you'll get one, or whatever it's going to be. And then the other approach is, I know Mark Pogendorf had mentioned maybe finding a way of doing co-op buying.
Yep.
And the issue there, the larger manufacturers, of course, aren't going to buy into that because they want to have more control over that relationship of who's selling their stuff, and it's understandable. But the smaller hobby stores or the smaller hobby manufacturers might be able to work out that approach. And whether it is a co-op of manufacturers setting up a shared distribution, or a co-op of hobby stores setting up a shared purchasing arrangement. Now, there might be something to work in there, but I just don't think anyone's had the time or the brain power to figure it out yet.
Stephen, could I ask a question about, do you work through a distributor for some of, for instance, radio control models? Do you have a large distributors, or is that part of them, the marketplace that you deal with?
Yeah, I work, we place orders almost every day at my store. I work with many of the big national distributors like Horizon Hobby, and they own Athearn, and they own a lot of radio control brands, and they distribute a lot of other model railroader products. So I order from Horizon and other stores like Hobby Time and HRP, big distributors. And then there are some that I go direct to. But the difficulty is the ones that I go direct to, about the only time I would do that is if it is a high volume manufacturer. Because when they get to, you're in a situation with, a single purpose kind of product with some of these manufacturers. But in order to make it viable to stock that item, you have to place a $500 order. And sometimes it's just, I can't work through that $500 order in more than 3-4 months.
Understood.
Yeah, figuring that one out is the hard part. So.
Well, the business model that seems to be very prevalent in the Southeast where I live is especially model railroad exclusively hobby shops will work on an order basis. We have a large distributor named Walthers, and all of the hobby shop owners, again, small business, they will go after an item that's, maybe it's a locomotive and 300 units have been produced over in China, and then they're put on the container. They end up at a Walthers or some other distributor, and that's how they eventually trickle out to the modelers. But the only way that we modelers can get hold of those is first we have to know when that container's arriving in Los Angeles, and we also have to have a proactive hobby shop owner that will stay abreast of, okay, these units or this manufacturer has finally delivered something, and then we place an order with that hobby shop owner. And then the other benefit is when it finally comes in, and not always does it, but when it finally comes in, then we go and visit that hobby shop, and that's not the only thing we buy when we're in there.
Oh, yeah.
But we go in there specifically for that custom ordered specialty item. And more model railroading is getting to items that just don't ever hit the shelf or very limited production. And I think of locomotives because that's like a specialized area. And usually the production runs are under 1,000 units. So spreading those across North America, and I'm saying that for the benefit of my Canadian friends, which is about a third of our audience tonight, they have to share in those 1,000 units. So we have to rely on our hobby shop owners to be our eyes and ears and order takers to get some of these items.
Yeah, and Mark, in his presentation last week, and I do the same thing, we will do special orders for customers. We try to keep an eye. I check every week from all of our, well, not all of them. My wife does the stuffed animals and the Legos and things like that. But I check almost every week from our suppliers for new arrivals, stuff that's on the way, and we try to communicate to our customers about things that are coming. And we'll take a special order. We don't charge extra for the special orders. Sometimes we'll even charge less. We'll discount down to the internet pricing for a special order, because if a customer is going to special order something from us and they're going to pay us for it, we're not having the carrying costs and the expense of having it sit on the shelf waiting for someone to say, oh, hey, I want that. It's pre-sold. It was a special order.
Sure.
So we do that all the time for people. We order from Walthers. Don't do quite enough volume to order every week, but probably 3 weeks out of a month, we place an order.
That's good. That's certainly keeping pace with the way we're working down here in the Southeast. Most shops are minimum inventory.
But Stephen, do you have like a place you advertise that in the shop, or is it? Because I know I talked to my local hobby shop, same thing. I buy stuff from them. I call them up, they'll order it, they'll put it on their next Walthers order. But when I come in the shop, it's not publicized. There's nothing that says, order here, save the shipping, right? Because I mean, if you're buying 2 bottles of paint and you throw it on your order, it comes without shipping. If I go to buy 2 hours of paint from Walthers, I got to pay $7 in shipping, or whatever it may. But it strikes me that the hobby shops don't advertise that and don't really make it, and don't advertise it that as a group you should be publicizing that. You're saying, don't buy off the internet. You can buy anything off the internet from your local hobby shop. And there are 2 or 3 reasons to do that. I mean, 1 is you support the hobby shop. 2, you save the shipping. 3, it probably will get to you in better condition. And 4, you have to make another trip to the hobby shop, which lets you look and buy other things.
Yeah.
Which is good for us modelers. We got an excuse to go back. But it strikes me that you haven't gone out and really publicized that and said, hey, you can buy all these things from Walthers through us and get it in a week and a half. And if you don't need it tomorrow, it's a great way. Anyway, enough said. Thanks.
Now, that's an excellent point. It's something we do, but we don't do it as often as we should. So I've done the marketing, especially around holidays or major new releases or something like that, and say, hey, we place orders with these companies every week. Order it from us. You don't have to worry about porch pirates. You don't have to worry about shipping costs. You got someone who's going to keep it here and hold it for you and make sure that it gets into your hands and all of that. But you got a good point. We put it in our newsletter. Every once in a while, it might show up on our Facebook page, but we need to have bigger signage, especially at the railroad section that says, you don't see it, we'll get it. And make it a little more obvious that we can do that.
You mentioned, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, you mentioned that you have various groups come in there. We have a local hobby shop. It's only a few blocks from me. They're into wargaming, military modeling, radio control, and have every paint and airbrush supplies and 50% of what I model. Also, they stock electronics. Such as these Arduino equipment, which are becoming more and more popular as part of the railroad hobby. They just don't stock trains yet. However, my local group, which meets monthly of 40 to 45 railroad modelers, gather. It's an NMRA event. We are looking for a place and are now negotiating with this particular hobby shop for 2 things. 1, to be able to use the space that the war gamers use on Monday and the RC people use on Wednesdays and Fridays. And he's got, 1,000 square feet and some chairs, tables, and has various groups there. So we're going to try to squeeze our group in there. That's the first effort. And the second one is use him as custom ordering of model railroad equipment just to get him started. He's not ready to commit to keeping holiday trains for the kids in his shop yet, but we're in the process of negotiation and just getting that dialogue going. And by using okay, we're going to order through you, because even the radio controllers use the Walthers and other distributors. So we have that line of communication open, and I think we're going to be able to make a go of it for ourselves to have a meeting there once a month, and for the owner to be able to increase his volume of model railroad related stuff. Because like I said, we're in there, we're buying the paint, we're buying servos, we're buying Arduinos. Just a matter of, gee, let's put an N scale locomotive or some O scale cars in there, just to get it started.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if he has the room, or first off, let me say, tell him to join NERSA and come to the show in October, because we're going to have more model railroad activity, and he can probably learn more. And the RC suppliers and all of the rest are going to be there too, so he can satisfy his current itch.
Who knows?
He's
fairly, for our area, this is central North Carolina, near the capital. He may already be a member. Good. But I'll probably be in there before the week's out. I'm very short of paint for a project, and I'll go in there and shoot the breeze with him.
What's the name of the shop?
It's called Hangar 18
in
Raleigh, Cary, North Carolina, Cary. Hangar 18. And he's
okay. I'll look it up on our membership list, and if he's not, I'll just send him a polite email.
There you go. I'm sure he's on there. I don't know if they have another store opened yet. They were talking about that, and they have moved twice recently to just get bigger and bigger facilities. I think he's up 5,000-6,000 square feet now.
Cool. And
looking to add some more so that he can put a bunch of old railroad guys in there, about 40 of us once a month. So we're always looking for another meeting room. We could put everybody.
Wonderful. In. Yeah, I love the idea that you're going to start having club meetings at his store.
That's what we've been trying to do. Back in 20 years ago, we actually had that. We had a local hobby shop who's no longer with us, rest his soul, but we had our meetings there. Mm-hmm. And we've just been, over the years, we've just been moving this group from place to place, and we lost our last meeting room due to COVID. We used to meet in a nursing home, so that was the end of that. But we're hoping to find a location, and what better than a hobby shop? Yeah.
In fact, that train layout behind me, the way that came into existence was a local model railroad club. And this is many years ago, nothing to do with COVID or anything like that, but they just lost their home. They had a space that they were being allowed to use, and they were building a permanent modular railroad in that space. And they lost their home and had to move it all out. And the president of the club at that time came to me and said, "Hey, Steve, could we meet at your store?" And I said, "I'd love to have you meet at my store." And he said, "And you know what? To keep us busy and active, because we can't work on our main layout because there's no place for us to permanently put it, we will build a layout for your store as long as you just provide the materials." And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And that train layout behind me has been operating for over 10 years now. So, so that's a great way to build that relationship, that, what's the word, collaboration between the club and the store, and then that'll just grow things. I'm hoping this year, we used to every year have a train show inside the store. And it wasn't like the traditional train show where there was a lot of vendor selling going on, because we didn't have the room to have layouts and selling. But we would fill the store with layouts all over the place, and the public would just flock in because everybody loves to see a running train. And we would have 3 or 4 layouts of almost every scale going. And COVID has kind of shut that down the last couple of years, and I'm hoping maybe this is the year I can bring it back.
Excellent.
Well, going along those lines, Stephen, I have a question here, and that's on the train shows that now that COVID's kind of, I don't want to say winding down, but we're starting to say, I'm going to go to a train show or whatever.
We're figuring out how to live with the
Yeah,
situation.
live in the COVID era, whatever you want to call it. But it's starting to, the train shows are starting to come back, like Slim Rails. We just got done, and they were in a shopping mall along with a gun show right next door. So, and they had probably, I think it was 40 some odd layouts in that area. But my question is, for your organization, are you considering trying to go out to some of the train shows, like the larger ones, say like the National Narrow Gauge Convention, or would there be too much of a conflict with manufacturers for that? So are you looking at maybe trying to go to some of the smaller ones and somehow get the word out? I'm just trying to understand if there's something that we as modelers going to that level should be doing to help you.
So what you're asking there about the shows, we do have a little bit of a presence going on there. It's not super formal, but there are a couple of members in NERSA that are primarily model railroading stores. And one of them's a big one. I don't know if you guys know Nassau Hobby, but the owner of Nassau Hobby, which is in New York, big train store, big mail order, model railroading, is the president of NERSA right now. So he goes to a lot of the train shows. And there's another one, Fred's his name. He's out in California here. I think it's Whistle Stop. And he goes to a lot of the ones out here on the West Coast. And a lot of times when they go to those, then they get reimbursed for doing a NERSA booth and having a booth there. It's kind of odd. I mean, it's not a problem or a conflict, but the customers, the public, sees a booth about a hobby stores association. They go, oh, well, I'm not a store. That's not for me. So we got to figure out how to say, no, but come in and find out where's the nearest NERSA store for you, how we can help connect you with stores. And that's part of the NERSA education program that we're just kicking off, is we want membership in NERSA to represent something like Mr. Goodwrench, a good housekeeping seal of approval or something like that. If you've got a hobby store that's a certified NERSA member, that means they didn't just throw down a check to join the organization. They had to jump through some hoops and show some competence that you can rest assured that you're dealing with a high quality hobby store. So that's our goal. That's the vision. And then it would make a real big sense to go to all those train shows and say, if you're a train store, you should join NERSA. Here's how you can join NERSA. And if you're a train customer, you should shop at these places because we're training these people to be the best, highest service you can get. So
that's the kind of discussion you need with the modeler. The model railroader needs to understand that, and understands that they need to be able to support the hobby stores that are members of the association and that are trying to accommodate them.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm quite frankly kind of thinking of the modular type of clubs, because they tend to show up like the modular clubs that I'm in. We have ON3 and HON3, so 2 sets of modular layouts, but we do probably 4 to 6 shows a year where we have both of those sets of layouts going. So you have, basically 12 layouts being set up, and we're doing everything from the Colorado State Fair to National Narrow Gauge conventions and things. As for your organization, I'm wondering if it would make any sense to reach out to some of the various higher quality modular layout clubs to see if maybe working out some sort of a deal with them to sponsor information to push the NERSA people when they're at the shows, because I can tell you when I'm running trains, I get probably 20 questions an hour on where can I buy XYZ
Uh-huh.
that people are seeing.
Where can I get
And,
this? And yeah, you can
you
say,
know,
I know a great shop. Let me,
yeah, and if I could say, well, what area are you from, and pull out a pamphlet that has, maybe a 4 or 5 state region, because oftentimes there's people from, I'm in Colorado, or used to be, but we would have people, well, down here in Arizona, we get Colorado people all the time coming in, and Texas and Wyoming, and some from California. So it's if I had a pamphlet that had the stores by given area that I could pull out of my pocket and say, these are the hobby shops that we would probably be buying from.
Mhm.
I don't know if that would help, but I'm just trying to say, it's another level, another venue to reach the everyday modeler to shop at the stores.
No, I think that's a great idea. I even wrote that down. NERSA collaboration with train show layout displays. I was scanning through the participant list here as well to see if I recognized anybody from NERSA hopping on there. I know that for sure there'll be a few that'll come watch the replay. But I'll bring that up as one of the points at our next meeting, probably again in the communications meeting, maybe the membership meeting, because that'd be a great way to get member stores as well. They go to the train show, they see the people that are running the layouts promoting NERSA stores. And they're like, hey, I should be a part of NERSA store. So I get these people promoting me too. So.
Something else a hobby shop might consider doing. The hobby shop right now, if they recommend to the NMRA a member and he joins, the hobby shop gets a piece of that membership fee. Well, how about the hobby shops doing something for the modeler that brings in new customers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might be we've done things like that before where we've got loyalty programs for customers that shop with us. And if they sponsor or sign up, get somebody else to sign up, then we'll say, all right, you're earning that person's rewards as well for the next year or something like that. So there might be some things, and maybe NERSA could help promote that idea amongst the store owners too.
And that's what you're hearing, at least from the people on the show tonight and so forth, and my comments. This is why I think there's a real potential here. And I think that there's just a disconnect between the hobby shop owner and the modeler. What I consider the modeler, not the person that buys a kit once a year, but the modeler that's in it 12 months a year and really is a committed.
It's what they do to unwind sometime every week. They work on their models. Yeah.
Absolutely. They're there for the long haul, and if they find a hobby shop they want to do business with, then they're there for the long haul.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to know each other, and then they're communicating, and then they become customer. Right now, it seems to me there's such a disconnect between the two groups and there's no forum, there's no place that the two groups can go to get together. And that's what I'm trying in my own small way to try to create here is and have Mark lead it. That's why I want to do the special segment. I think that could be really important, at least to try to get some communication going.
Yeah. No, I think there's some real promise there.
Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Just a question. Is it just an American association, or can Canadian hobby shops be part of that?
We do have Canadian members, and Canadian hobby stores are welcome to join. Yes.
Thank you.
In fact, I think the leader of our membership committee is a Canadian hobby store owner.
Stephen, I had a hobby shop from Canada. I think about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, somewhere, and I lose track now because I do this once a week and I lose track of when people were here. And I asked him that question. And he point blank said to me, no, we're not allowed. Canadians are not allowed to be members. So there is a disconnect there. At
Yeah,
least in,
that's definitely a communications problem then, because we do have Canadian members, yeah.
so that's the only Canadian hobby shop I've had.
Mhm.
But I specifically asked him, and that was his comment. He's in Toronto, so he has a fairly sizable market.
Yeah, if you're comfortable later on, or check with him, if he'd like to have me reach out to him, I'd be happy to send him an email and talk to him about nursing.
How about I just send you his email and introduce you by email and let you talk to him from there?
Sure thing.
Yep. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Stephen, thanks so much for being here tonight. I look forward to talking with you again. And I look forward to what your association decides they might be willing to do with us. And maybe we can figure out some way that we can cooperate together.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to talk to your members.
Thank you so much.
Okay.